Okay. My name's Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome, everybody. Tara's going to come up here and she's going to explain. This is our annual Women's Month. What we do here is 1 month out of the whole year we dedicate specifically for women. Try to bring some of the best women that we can find in all of AA just for you guys. And so it's been pretty cool. We're 5 weeks in, we got 1 more week. So Tara, come on up here and have some fun. I don't know what I got to announce other than be mindful of this church. No smoking in any of the bathrooms. That's pretty much universal at all churches. Anyway, Tara.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tara. I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 in Doylestown, PA. As Ron mentioned, September is Women's Month here at Doylestown. We're in the 5th week of a 6-week month. I don't know how that happened, but I hope none of you men are counting that we women got a 6-week month. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 to 7:30 p.m. right here. Is that a little bit better with the mic? Maybe a little farther away? Okay. The purpose of the group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town who would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Nobody's new? Everybody. Hi.
Hello, John.
Hi, John. Hi. Hi, Brad. Welcome.
My name's Monette. I'm an alcoholic from DC.
Hi, Monette. Welcome. Anyone else?
My name's John. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, John. Welcome.
My name's Mike. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Mike. Welcome. Anybody else? Hi, Val. Welcome. Anybody who wouldn't like to introduce themselves, but they will anyway. It's how we measure willingness. You do it anyway. What else? The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and who is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. There we go again, that measure of willingness, doing it anyway. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Okay. And we have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. Home group members, want to raise your hands? Okay. Thanks. And do we want this mic lower? Okay. If you would like, we have meeting lists and big books, anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked big book and CD donations. Thank you, Ron. That was Ron on the mic. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And now I've asked Nick to come up and read the AA preamble.
Hello, my name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic. This is the AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses or opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And we have Rich going to read the 12 steps. Got him.
All right, looks like I'm reading the 12 steps here. I'm Rich. I'm an alcoholic.
Okay. Number one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
The 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like someone else to pass the basket, because I'm here. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, workshops, etc. There's absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, I'd like to ask you to welcome Joyce K. from the Midtown Group in Bethesda, Maryland, who's been kind enough to come up here and to the Conscious Contact Group, a very good friend of ours, and share a message of hope with us.
Hi, my name is Joyce. I'm alcoholic. Hey, Joyce. My sobriety date's April 24th, 2005. I have a sponsor and a home group, and I'm very grateful to be here with you all tonight. Thank you so much, Ron, for asking me to come share. It's definitely a privilege and an honor to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous for AA, because this is the only thing that has worked for a drunk like me. And I'm like thoroughly impressed with your group. I'm always impressed with your group and with Ron, and someone that I love and respect in AA, but I'm like, I feel like I should be like singing on this stage or like performing or something. But this is very next level here. And hot dogs at your meeting. I mean, you really just make my home group look not like we're not trying hard enough. So you guys are very lucky to be here. This is a great group and an active group. So with all that aside, I'm supposed to just share in a general way what I was like, what happened, and how I try to live today. Like I described, I mean, I am an alcoholic. I describe myself like what the book says, I'm an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. You know, that's how I've identified myself. And, you know, my story starts out about an hour and a half, 2 hours east from here. I was born and raised in Jersey. I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, first generation American, came from a family of drunks. None of those things make me alcoholic, but I always mention them because they gave me a lot of access to alcohol. I had my first drunk at 10 years old, summer of 5th grade, Johnny Walker Black Label, and it changed my life. You know, I'm going to paint a picture of what I was before that night, and what that is I was a nerd, loser, terrified, just paralyzed with fear and awkwardness. You know, and there are a lot of kids out there that suffer from those type of maladies, but what makes me an alcoholic is when I drank that Johnny Walker Black Label, it washed all of that away. And I had no idea what I suffered from was a spiritual malady, you know, that my spirit was broken from the get. and I was somebody that my whole life, before I started drinking, I was looking for an answer. You know, I couldn't tell you that, but I was, and I sought it out in approval, in boys, in success, I mean, anything. I just needed something outside of me to make me feel okay. You know, and nothing worked, and I don't know what that is. I mean, we'd be in our little apartment, and I'd have like 14 relatives sleep in there with us, and there's no reason I should feel lonely. I mean, the place is packed, you know, but I'm lonely. You know, I suffer from this loneliness that only people like us understand, and my first drunk was a magical night. I always talk about it because it really summarizes what the next 8 years of my life would be, and what that is that I had been stalking this kid, Jason, for 3 years, and he was my first obsession. Don't act like you don't relate, you know what I mean? I know there's some real stalkers, men and women in here, and he was the thing that was gonna fix me, you know? I mean, he was it. He was like one of those punk kids dealing dime bags. I see a few of you out here, and, you know, drinking his 40 in a paper bag, thinking he was real hard, and I thought he was, you know, and I invited him over to our house. We had just moved to this new town, Old Bridge, and I was, you know, terrified. I was this nerd of a kid, bowl haircut, rainbow thick glasses, eczema, you know, just that. No, I didn't stand a chance with Jason. You know, Jason was trying to get booze, but anyway, so he came over, and what happened that night is what happens every night, every day of my life, is my head started to attack me. You know, you're a loser, laugh, don't laugh, you're sweating, put your hands down, you're talking too loud, you're not talking loud enough. I mean, I just have this committee in my head that is relentless, you know, and when I went down to that bar and grabbed the first bottle I saw and poured a couple of Johnny Walkers, something happened to me, you know, and if you're new tonight, this is the effect produced by alcohol, that I have this special relationship, and I don't just get tipsy, you know, I don't just lose my inhibitions like people downtown are doing right now. You know, the effect alcohol has on a girl like me is profound. You know, it quieted the madness. It made me feel like for the first time in my life I was on an even playing field with the rest of the world. You know, and the more magical part is the second drink that I had is that Jason was a loser, you know, and that I am too good for him. And the next drink that I had was, you know, I'm too good for everybody in this damn town, you know. And that's what happened with me. It's like the more I drank, the bigger my ego got, and I literally transformed like a butter, you know, a caterpillar transforming. I mean, he was like something out of a textbook. I mean, I became a totally different person after that evening. You know, and I had no idea that what happened that night also was that, you know, I experienced the phenomenon of craving. You know, I did kick Jason out and this other girl that he had brought over, and I started drinking by myself, and I had no idea that that was abnormal. You know, it just was that good. And no one had to teach me how to take the morning drink. No one had to teach me how to take a nightcap. No one had to teach me how to pack my bottles with me. I mean, it was as natural as breathing and blinking, and it made sense. You know, for the first time, from that day forward, it was like my life made sense. And I loved it. You know, I was the life of the party. That loser girl was dead to the world, and I had arrived, you know, like Bill Wilson describes. And I was the girl dancing on tables, the girl that was supplying all the liquor, the girl that you wanted at your party, and it was awesome, you know? I mean, we'd take the train up to New York and party all night. We'd have awesome house parties, and it was just great, you know? And if I'm not here to badmouth drinking, I loved it, you know? If I didn't love it, I wouldn't have ended up here. I was obsessed with it, you know? It was the great love of my life, and it was awesome, you know, until it wasn't. Because unfortunately, if you're an alcoholic like me, this is a progressive illness, you know? And that good, consequence-free part of my drinking is short-lived, you know? Very shortly, within 2 years, I had my first intervention. And what it looked like, it just looked like I was getting sloppy, you know? That's what it looked like to me. Like, in the beginning, I could drink as hard and as much as I wanted, and nothing would happen. I could make it home at night, no problems, no questions asked. And something started to happen where I'd start browning out, I'd start blacking out, my emotional nature became more and more unpredictable. You know, like that fun-loving Joyce was just, you didn't know if you were going to get her that night. I could become angry. I could become depressed and suicidal. I could become, just totally shut down, and you wouldn't know what the hell is going on with me. And people don't like that. People think you're a liability. People don't get tired. They get tired of babysitting you, cleaning up after you. And that's what started happening very slowly. So my first intervention, chairs circled up, someone's crying at me, someone's yelling at me. We got a professional, a substance abuse counselor in the room, telling me that I have a problem. And it became my first experience, and many of you have probably done this, where you just tell them what you want to hear, what they want to hear. We learn this type of lip service. I'll say what you want to get you off my back. A girl like me, I can cry on command. I could flip the script, and I could, make it your fault and make you feel sorry for me. And, poor me, we're poor, my dad's a drunk, and make it everybody else's fault, and distract you from what the real problem is, which is my drinking. And I would never concede that was the problem. I'd just be pointing in every other direction, smoke and mirrors. And I went to therapy, I got sent to counseling, I got sent to Jesus camp. People were trying to figure out what's wrong with Joyce. I was trying to figure out what's wrong with Joyce, because eventually, within a couple years of that intervention, I started to scare myself. I remember my first real bad blackout where I came to and I was naked, bleeding, bruised. Our literature describes it as incomprehensible demoralization, where we wake up with that terror, frustration, that humiliation, that despair, and I don't know what happened the night before, and I don't want to know. When you start waking up with that type of filth, with that type of shame, you just have to drink on top of that, to shut those voices up. And I remember crying in the bathroom, taking a bath after shower after shower after shower, trying to rub the dirt off me and swearing to God, I'm never going to drink like that again. Never hanging out with those people again. Never, 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 never. And I meant it, And then 24 hours later, I'm back at it. And that was my first real experience with the baffling feature of this thing called alcoholism, is that I have this insane mind. I have this head that constantly justifies, rationalizes why it's going to be different this time. I have this mind that can't remember the pain and suffering of my last drunk, no matter what. That night shocked my consciousness. I did not grow up to be living this kind of life. And there I was, 24 hours later, back at it again. And the sad part about our illness is that we just become desensitized and we recalibrate to this life. So that first time, that would have been one of dozens of times I'd wake up that way. And we just get used to it, and I've tried all sorts of things to try to control and enjoy my drinking that our literature describes. I started switching brands. If I got off the dark liquor, got on the clear liquor. If I got on the beer, I introduced a lot of outside substances. If I could, snort a couple lines or eat a couple pills or smoke a little of this, then maybe I wouldn't black out. Maybe I wouldn't lose control. I kept trying to get back to this place of, I want to catch this buzz. I want to get back to that good feeling buzz that I had for a little while. But I just couldn't get back there. And if you have to strategize before you go out, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's not normal behavior. You don't have to if you have to map out a plan about how you're going to make it home that night, or what happens if you don't. I was packing a backpack of survival kit, spare clothes, spare shoes. I started writing my address on my forearm, you know what I mean? Because I'm like a runner, I'd get lost and just couldn't find my way home. So I just start holding up my hand, and just hope that somebody could get me back where I came from. And I had assigned babysitters, okay, Tommy's in charge of me tonight, make sure I'm okay. Who needs to do that? Who needs bodyguards and babysitters to drink and party? And people like us do, because I have no control. And that's what I couldn't see until I came here to Alcoholics Anonymous, is this lack of control. No matter how great the necessity or wish, I just couldn't control the amount that I took in. Once I started, I was off to the races, and you never knew what was going to happen. So I always mention a couple of things that changed the trajectory of my drinking. The first one is, in the middle of my drinking, I was always, this merry-go-round had started on and off the wagon, day counts, renewing my family's hope and then pulling it all down. And just trying to prove to everybody, I don't have a problem. That was like for years. I don't have a problem, this is why. And then I would try to prove to you that I didn't have a problem. And then I'd go back out and be on a spree and destroy everything all over again. Well, in the middle of one of these sprees, my mother has a brain aneurysm and dies. Christmas Eve, 2001, she has a brain aneurysm and she's taken to JFK Hospital in Jersey. And, they can't resuscitate her. And I remember going to the chapel of that hospital and being mortified. My mother was the only decent person in my life. She was the only person in my family who didn't drink, who didn't beat me, she went to church every Sunday, did rosaries on Monday. She was an awesome woman, and the shame and guilt I felt was kind of like that first blackout I had. It was indescribable demoralization. And I swore, I swore to God, I swore to myself that for her memory, for her sake, I was going to turn this around, because that was my regret with my mother, is that she didn't get the daughter she deserved. She was a decent woman, and every day she left the house and said, "Joyce, be good today." I said, "Yeah, Ma," and I knew I couldn't. I wasn't capable of it. So I made that promise, and I meant it. You could have hooked me up to a polygraph, and I meant it, One day, 2 days later, drunk again. And I always mention this because it was the best example that I had that frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. That there is no amount of love, no amount of guilt, no amount of sorrow or grief that will hold me sober. That stuff wears off and is gone with the wind, and it has no hold or bearing with this thing called alcoholism. That insanity gets on me and I return to the drink like that. So that's what happened, and I always mention this as a turning point in my drinking, because it really changed the trajectory of my life, because now it's just me and my drunken father. My mother used to be like a governor. She was like the brake, that would kind of keep us somewhat regulated. But when she died, it was like done. Now it's just me and my drunken father, and we beat each other up, we drink around the clock, and the last 4 years I'm in Jersey are hell, I spent a lot of times just painting this picture, and a long time into sobriety, talking about what a victim I was. If you lived in this house, if you had to go through what I went through, you'd be this way too. And I never took real accountability until I was probably like 5 years sober, that I was an equal participant in those years. That I'm not a nice girl that drank too much or a victim of my dad. That I am a selfish, self-centered alcoholic that chased down the next drink and next fix as much as he did. That I was the type of daughter that I was, that I would be pushing him down the stairs when he was drunk, because I knew he wouldn't remember. He'd be carried home drunk, and his friends would say that I needed to take care of him, and I'd purposely keep him on his back so he could choke on his vomit. The type of daughter I was, is that when my dad was, going through unbelievable grief, having suddenly lost his wife, he was prescribed all these medications, and I'd steal them, so I could crush them up, snort them, and reinforce my drinking, and he'd leave him there in hysteria while he frantically looked for him, I'd slip a few things in his drink so he would be comatose and I could throw a party at the house. That is the type of monster that I became, and that's not who I was. I really just begun running off of pure instinct. I want to feel good now. I don't care. Everyone and everything was like collateral damage. And at the end of that 4 years, I was convinced he was the problem, Jersey was the problem. If I could just restart somewhere else, everything would be okay. And that's what I tried to do. As I moved down to DC. I picked DC because, us were like grandiose. I was like, I'm going to go to the nation's capital and be president. I really thought that, just never made it out of my basement in Jersey, but I really thought this was going to work. So I went down to DC to try to recreate my life, and the day that I got there, I'm coming to on the same dirty bathroom floor of some decrepit apartment, surrounded by the same people doing all the same things again. Not even 24 hours in a new city, there I was. I could not outrun myself. And, my last year in DC, I had picked up all sorts of harder substances that definitely catapulted me into my bottom. You know, I had no intentions of slowing down, no intentions of asking for help. You know, Bill Wilson describes this stage of our drinking as desperation drinking. I'm not drinking to catch a buzz. I'm not drinking to meet my boyfriend. You know, I'm drinking for oblivion. I'm drinking because my reality is so painful that I just want to be put out of my misery. And at the end of my drinking, I'm drinking grain alcohol, Everclear out of plastic bottles, you know, and I'm on all sorts of other substances. I had my first introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous was in 2004. I had been 12-stepped by a girl who found me on her roof. You know, at the end of my drinking, I had one junkie friend that was supplying me lots of things, and we would find locked locations to drink because I was such a runner. I don't know where I got that thing from. I'd start drinking, I just like gone, you know, they'd have to like look for me in like parking lots and alleyways, you know. So my junkie friend, as a solution to this, we would find like closets or like, you know, just locked confined spaces. So this one particular night she found this roof in DC. We went up this roof, this building we didn't know anybody in that building. We just went up to this building, went up to the rooftop, and not like one of those cool DC rooftop bars, you know, I mean, this is like an actual roof. And it's like, you know, if you ever been on a rooftop of a building, you can access it once you're going through the building, but you can't, once you close the door, you can't access the building again. Security measure, you know what I mean? So we close the door behind us and we just start drinking. We drink a bottle of vodka and I black out, you know, and by this point I'm blacking out on the regular, and by this point I'm used to waking up in all sorts of places. But the next morning I wake up and I am fully clothed, I am on a couch and I'm tucked in with a blanket, and I've never been more scared. You know what I mean? I thought I was like, I've been abducted. You know what I mean? This is like some Lifetime movie shit right here. I was like so scared. And this girl who was barely 5 feet tall, she looked like a midget. I don't even know if that's PC to say. I'm sorry if I've offended anybody. But she just came bouncing over at me, so happy to see me. It was unsettling, you know? And she was like laughing and just gave me some water, and she sat down on the couch across from me, asked me no questions about myself. And if you're a blackout drinker like me, you are used to people coming at you, you know? I mean, that is like part of it. You're used to people coming at you, screaming, berating you with questions. And she didn't do that, you know? She just started telling me about herself. She sat down and she started telling me about her drinking. And it was unbelievable. You know, she started telling me how hard she drank and how she could drink grown men into the table. And I'm like, she looked like she was 12, you know. And I loved it. I loved her ego and her pride. I mean, the way that she was like rattling off all these brands and, you know, talking about the drugs she did and, you know, how she blacked out and she loved it because she was like time traveling, you know. And this is the first time I heard anybody say that. And then she started hitting me with the heavy stuff, like how at night she can't fall asleep because her head's so loud. I mean, she's the first person I'd ever heard say something like that. She talked about how her skin didn't fit. She was so uncomfortable in her own skin. And what I didn't realize was happening that morning was the language of the heart. You know, one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic, removing these feelings of difference. And she was a woman that was armed with facts about herself. You know, she had a command of what an alcoholic was, and she was only 2 months sober. You know, she was only 2 months sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and she'd sold me right there in like 15 minutes. In my whole life, I had this ego, this chip on my shoulder that you don't know me. You know, I'm a tough Jersey girl, you don't know me, and I'm deep and complex, you know, and for some reason, this girl was just able to lower those walls, you know. She was able to pierce those walls, and I could really hear her, and I really feel like she got me. And that's the magic here, is I don't know where you came from, I don't know what you've been through, but if you're an alcoholic like me, we've been through it the same, you know. And she took me to a meeting that night. Her and her boyfriend picked me up. I got a big book, I got a sponsor. They started picking me up every day of the week. And I was crying to her that morning, telling her little bits and pieces of truth. We have these windows of willingness where I have these moments of surrender where I knew I needed help. I knew that this is what I've been looking for. It was the first person I'd ever connected to. But by the time I got to that meeting and I saw these steps on the wall, I was like, hell no. Hell no. God, are you kidding me? That's like offensive. I've been devout Roman Catholic my whole life. I memorized scripture from the Bible. I almost became a Franciscan nun. Like, I know about religion. That didn't work for a girl like me. And I saw the word powerless, and that offended me even more. If you knew what I had to live through, what I've been through in my life, there ain't nothing powerless about me. I live this way because I want to live this way. And I really thought that. I thought, I'm still drinking because I want to drink. And I live this way because this is the life I choose. And I had my ego rebuilt so fast, it was unbelievable. And I just identified out, which is very easy. I'm different, I'm young, I'm too smart, I'm too capable, I'm too it all, and I just went back out. I thanked them, and I was like, I'll keep your numbers, I'll keep this book, and I put that book on my shelf, and I proceeded my next, plan, and my next plan was I was just going to be on a bunch of prescription pills that I wasn't prescribed. I thought that was going to fix it, and if I could just manage my feelings and my emotions and my drinking with these pills, and it'd be okay. And it led me back to the drink. Always back to the drink. And if you're confused tonight, if you're new, I always like to mention this. I love drugs, but I'm an alcoholic because I have an abnormal relationship with alcohol. And whenever I did drugs, it always led me back to the drinking, and I could not put it down. I could not put it down. My last drunk was April 24th, 2005. That was my father's wedding, was April 23rd. That was my last drunk. He was getting remarried. He had called me. He had knocked up this woman, and they were having a shotgun wedding. And I don't know why I went. It was God. I really do believe God was using my defects to save me. I was so egotistical. I just wanted to get up there and show them how well I was doing. So I attended this wedding. All I had to do was make it 24 hours without getting messed up, and I really thought I could do that. I really thought I could go up there and put on a show. I got up there. I felt what we feel: restless, irritable, discontent. And I didn't have vocab words like that before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I could tell you I felt uncomfortable. I just felt tight. Got that tight feeling in my chest, get tense around my shoulders, feel awkward around people, and I know what makes that go away, And I went over to the open bar, grabbed a Jack and Coke, because I thought this is a harmless cocktail. I'm just going to have one, and I really believed that. And I had a Jack and Coke, and it woke that beast up. And I got thirstier. And that's what happens with me. I drink, I get thirstier, and I got another, blacked out, passed out, fall down drunk, carried out of that wedding, just another humiliating night. Nowhere near my worst drunk by a long shot, but for some reason when I came to on April 24, 2005, something had shifted inside me, and I can only account it to the grace of God, is that I felt tired. And I hope to God that you feel tired. If you're new, that you feel out of options, that you feel out of plans, out of lies, because that's what I felt like. I took one of those cheap $20 Chinatown buses, and I got phone call after phone call from my family members telling me, what a piece of shit I was. How disgusting I was, how my mother would be so ashamed. And typically, I'd have a lot of rebuttal for that. Typically I'd have a lot of things to say back and turn it around on them, or make them feel sorry for me, play those victim cards that I have in my back pocket. And I couldn't, I couldn't even muster up the energy to retaliate. And I just shut my mouth and I listened, because deep down inside I knew that they were right. And I didn't use or drink that day, and by the 25th I was going through detox and withdrawal. And I woke up the next morning and I was sick, and I'd never detoxed before. I had no idea what that was. Thought I was dying. I wanted to be taken to a hospital. And instead, my junkie friend, called the cab, and it took me to a clubhouse in DC. And I stayed in that clubhouse for 4 days, and the women in there coddled and cradled me and rocked me. and I threw up, sweated, and cried, and it was like, I was convinced. I was like, oh my God, it's the drugs, you know? And I had to get, I was like, I need to just get off these hard stuff and I could just get back to drinking. And I came up with my new plan, you know? I just need to drink wine like a lady. I hadn't tried that, you know, and I really thought that that was gonna be it. And that is how my mind works. You know, if you're exhausted by listening to this, I was exhausted living it. Like, for God's sake, lady, you know, and that's what it was. My mind just constantly comes up with the next plan and the next plan and the next plan. And I don't even realize that it's doing it, you know, and that is alcoholism. And I went back to my apartment with that plan in my pocket, and thank God it was interrupted. You know, this girl, Julie, lived in the floor beneath me. She came to my door, had no idea I'd been detoxing for 4 days, no idea I was planning to drink that night. All she knew is that I went to AA in 2004. And I don't know why. She told me she had a rough weekend and she needed help and she wanted to go to an AA meeting and knew that I'd gone before. And I don't know why she came. You know, I'm not like your good neighbor that you're asking favors from, you know. I'm a recluse and I'm not a good person, you know. I don't know why I agreed to take her, but for some reason, I don't know if it was the example that was set before me or what, but I said, yeah, you know, I'll take you. Like, we called the AA hotline. It told us about the Foggy Bottom group, which meets on Thursday nights in DC, still meets there. And it was an 8:30 meeting, and we must have got there at like 9:15. You know, we caught the last 15 minutes of this meeting. We were in the back. It was a candlelight meeting. If you've ever been to a candlelight meeting, they're so creepy, you know? I just thought, I can't even believe I'm sitting in here. I mean, if this had been any other version of Joyce, I would have just left, you know, because I'm that judgmental. And everybody was talking in that very therapeutic voice. You know, it sounded like that's how it sounded to me. And for some reason, though, I walked in the back of that meeting and something inside me broke, where I just started sobbing. And not like graceful tears down my eyes, crying. I'm talking like hyperventilating, yelping vowels, because I'm crying so hard, you know? And if you're new, and that's like, I might as well have held up a neon sign saying I'm new. So, you know, at the end of that meeting, we were surrounded, and these guys that are still sober today, Nate and Ed, were two members of my home group who were outreaching a conference my home group does. And they got on their phones, you know, they got on their phones and they said, hold on right there, we're gonna call some women. And they called these women from my home group and they made plans for me for the next day and for the next day and for the day after that. And I'm forever grateful, you know. Had someone just slipped me a number, had someone just gave me some keep coming back, there's no way I would have made it. You know, they went above and beyond and made sure I was taken care of for the next several days. And that's what my home group, and hopefully your home group does for people here, is that it is a strong enough current that if you are tired enough, you will just be carried. And you can't get carried the whole way, but at least they bought me enough time until I found enough willingness of my own to do the work that was required here. And that's what happened, is that I fell into this active group that babysat me and took me to meetings. They took me to noons. They took me to the night meeting. They watched me in between those two meetings. It was unbearable, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know if you've ever been in a car of AA people. They just talk about themselves incessantly, you know? They're just constantly sharing stories. No one wants to hear what you have to say, you know? And I had no idea that they were trying to share their experience, strength, and hope. And I resented all of them. You know, I was so angry that anyone who was remotely happy, I just wanted you to die. I mean, I went into my home group meeting that first Sunday night, and it might as well have been a Gap commercial. I mean, people were like in collared shirts, suits, you know what I mean? They were just like so happy that, you know, they got a long greeting line, and it was, I mean, and as much as I hated them, I remember feeling, God, I want what they have. You know, I would have never admitted that to you, but I really did. I really felt like I want what they have. And I got a sponsor that night, and it was a sponsor by name, but it was a sponsor nonetheless who I called for the first several weeks. And I wish I could tell you that I have had some amazing, that I got some magical sober dust was sprinkled on me that night and I lived happily ever after, but most of you know, whether you have a month, a week, or several years sober, is that getting sober is incredibly difficult. It goes against everything that is natural in my life. Everything. I got to call a sponsor every day. I got to go to meetings. I got to help other people. I have to be vulnerable. I have to be honest. These things do not come naturally for a girl like me. I had to be taught how to do this, and I was not a quick study. I'm someone that was self-obsessed, and also I was someone who really struggled. If you're a happy newcomer, God bless you, welcome. I was not a happy newcomer. I was a miserable newcomer that cried at every meeting, that was in constant compulsion to drink, and needed a lot of attention and support, and I'm grateful that people were so patient with me. They took my calls, they let me cry, and they'd walk me off the ledge time after time after time. They prayed with me until I could level out, and that's what started to happen. And I'm grateful that I eventually got a sponsor that began taking me through these steps. Because for a couple months in AA, I was just going to meetings. I was going to meetings, getting crazier and crazier, wondering, why isn't this working? And I thought that that's how this worked. I thought I was supposed to come to these meetings and I'd get this by osmosis or something, I had no idea that I needed to put in work, real bone deep work here. And it wasn't only until I got my sponsor that began taking me through the literature. It took me through the book, and when it said pray, we pray. When it said do this, we do that. When it said write. And that's when I began experiencing relief. With every step that I took in this program, something began shifting inside of me. And it was such an unbelievable concept that I was the problem. My whole life, it was my dad was the problem. Even my drinking was the problem. And now you're telling me my drinking's not the problem, it's the solution, and you're the problem. And I was my head nearly exploded. When I read 60 to 63 for the first time, and it said selfishness, self-centeredness, that's the root of our troubles. And we talk about the act of running the show and manipulating people. I had no idea that you all were doing the same exact thing. I really prided myself on that type of lifestyle. I thought I was clever, and here it is, written in 1939, and it seemed like thousands of other alcoholics were living exactly the way I was. And I remember that was a turning point for me when I sat down with my sponsor, read that third step, and I read the third step promises for the first time. Where it said that we had a new employer being all powerful. He provided what we needed if we kept close and did his work well. And it talked about this new relationship with this creator, that he was the father and we were his children. And I just started sobbing, because my whole life I've postured myself as this tough girl, but the reality is that I was terrified and I was tired. I was tired of me against the world. That's a lonely, tiring way to live. And, I really desperately wanted what this book was trying to promise me, And so I began writing my fourth step. I thought that I was, I remember my sponsor explained to me resentment. I'm like, oh, this is it's not gonna take me very long. I don't care, things don't really bother me. That's what I thought. And, 400 names later, I was literally every human being I've ever come into contact with was on that list. It took me a full 9 hours to do that fifth step. Talk about petty. Talk about sensitive. I had everything. I remember Ashley Bonnet at first grade telling me I had bad breath. That stuff was still eating me up inside. And, all these things, this shame that I carried, and then I would turn it around and have to bully and beat up people weaker and smaller than me. That every relationship in my life, that was the first time that I got to see I'm not a nice girl that drank too much, that everyone that came into contact with me, I'd size you up and figure out, what can I get from you? How can I use you? Whether I'd admit it or not, whether conscious or not, that's how I operated. And so, it was the first big truth that I had to swallow. And, I had moved up to New Jersey temporarily. I thought it was a good idea in my early sobriety to take this job in New York. It definitely was not, I was definitely put the cart before the horse, like literature describes. I was just ready to get my life back in order, and I wanted to take this, what I thought was a big deal job. It wasn't. I was like a secretary at AIG, but I was like, this is a big deal. I got to take this job. And I took this job in New York and couldn't show up for it, and to make matters worse, I moved back into my father's residence in Jersey. And as you described, we don't have the best we don't have the best relationship. So, now I'm back into that toxic, broken relationship in early sobriety. And, it was a crazy time in my sobriety, but I always mention it because I was grateful, because I got introduced to this active group in Jersey, that really gave me the foundation for my sobriety. And, I was new in sobriety, and I got introduced to this guy, Jim. He picked me up from the train one day, and and it's not for everyone. I don't even know if this home group still exists, but I can tell you that they saved my life, and it's not for everyone. When I say crazy, I'm not exaggerating. Like, this guy picked me up from the train station and handed me a toe tag. Like, what you put on dead bodies? And I was like, what is this? He's like, that's if you don't do your 4th step. And I was like, oh my God, this is like some cult shit right here. So, they were definitely intense and militant, but it was a type of discipline that a girl like me needed. They would tell me, shut up on the regular, get in the car, and they'd take me, I'd go, where are we going? We're going to the meeting down the street. They're like, no, we're going to Baltimore. I'm like, why are we going to Baltimore? It's Thursday. And they're like, there's a great meeting in Baltimore on Thursday nights. And we would literally drive to Baltimore on Thursday night, go to the meeting, come back. And they took me to the most powerful messages. They took me to conferences and took me to the World Convention in Toronto, when I had a couple months sober, and they paid for me to go up there. And these experiences changed my life. They exposed me to some of my heroes in Alcoholics Anonymous, and these people, ingrained in me that out of self was the solution. A girl like me, I'm obsessed with my feelings. If I'm having a bad day, everyone's going to hear about it, and I want everyone to fix it. And these people, they just hammered me with, who are you helping? Who are you picking up for the meeting? Go to this detox. Go tell your story. And I was at the podium at 60, 90, 120 days sober, telling my story like in pieces and messing up, but at least I was out of myself. And I really caught fire for Alcoholics Anonymous, and I did a lot of things wrong. I did not properly read the chapter Working with Others before I started working with others, and I messed a lot of things up. I became the bankroller for many newcomers. I thought it was about social work, and I'd try to buy you new outfits, and I started parading new girls around like they were trophies of mine, and just being life coaches, and just everything the big book said don't do, I did. And I moved in a girl into my dad's house without telling him. He stole my car. She stole my car when we went. It was just like a mess. And I'm grateful that AA, we call it F up friendly, and we don't. If I just don't defend my mistakes here, I can learn from them, and that's what began happening. I started asking people for help on how to do this stuff, and people started showing me what it meant to really work with others. I ended up moving back down to DC, and that's where my sobriety really took off. I really got into a lot of the 8th and 9th step when I finally got back down to DC and cleaning up this wreckage. For a little while in AA, I thought I could just run around here and catch that good buzz. Because once that obsession wore off after that 4th and 5th step, I was feeling good. I want to rest on those laurels and just, go to the AA dance and just hang out. I wanted to do all the fun activities and not do the rest of the work, and that's not what it's about here. And so my sponsor reminded me that Dr. Bob drank again, since when he didn't want to do his 9th step, and it scared me enough that I started doing them, and that was a long road of reconstruction, and still is. I had to write a lot of letters to women that I bullied and beat up. I didn't hear back from a lot of them. I went and paid back money and restitution to places that I stole from, properties that I destroyed. I had, and I'm not like I'm the type of thief that I am. I stole from places like St. Jude's, like kids with leukemia. Like, that's the type of person that I became. And I just felt so entitled, and to this day, I have no idea with how much money I stole, so my contributions are a lifetime now, to St. Jude's. And made amends to my family members, that I've disrespected throughout the years. And I went back to my mother's grave and read a letter, and that transformation was unbelievable, and it's not just from reading that letter, but I know it's from how I've since conducted myself for the last 13 years. And I know today that my mother would be proud of the woman that I am. It took me 4 years before I could make direct amends to my father. That was a difficult path. I mean, for years in AA, I would walk out of amends meetings. I would walk out of big book meetings. If we were reading the family afterwards, I just felt so angry, that this is never going to happen for me. You guys are sharing your cute little Brady Bunch stories about how you're all reunited and it feels so good. And I'm here, my father won't pick up my calls. I'm here and we can't talk for more than 5 minutes without screaming at each other. And I have so much pent up anger that I'm starting to think about drinking again, and as justified anger as it felt, I was taken back to the book over and over and over again that the grouch and the brimstone were not for us. They're the dubious luxury of normal men. And to me, resentment is drink to death, that I can't afford it and I will drink again. So my home group members, these men and women, would pray with me. I mean, I remember punching walls and saying this prayer, Dad, I love you, I forgive you, I release you. Or, that God help me, this is a sick man, show me where I could be helpful, over and over and over again. And I'd be like spitting fire. It felt like poison to say those because I had this false idea that if I forgave him, it meant that the things he did were right, or that if I was asking for amends, it meant that I deserved that what happened to me, and that's not what it's about. My sponsor, I remember one night we were driving home from Virginia Big Book, which is a Tuesday night Big Book meeting, and we were reading Family Afterwards, which always set me off, and I was like on the way home just going off about, this is never going to happen for me, it's not fair, my typical sob story. And I remember my sponsor pulled over the car and I thought I was going to get a hug. And instead my sponsor poked me in the chest and said, when are you going to stop being the 10-year-old victim of your father? And it just shook me, I was like, right now, I'll do it right now, And it began this process, I needed that type of tough love. I started writing, the directions I got seemed insane. And you're going to get insane directions. My direction was, I want you to send him a Hallmark card every 2 weeks with an update on what you're doing. I mean, the last interaction I had with my father, he threw a chair and I said, I'm going to break your face. And now I'm going to send him a card with a dog on it. You know what I mean? Like, are you kidding me? And I did. I would send these letters. This is what I'm doing. I'm going back to school. And I'd give these updates. And that began, from that, it transformed into weekly calls. I'd call him every Monday morning. And those phone calls were like 2 minutes long. And then it became 5 minutes. And then it became 10 minutes long. And then a couple years later, I got the direction to end those conversations with I love you. And then I'd get hung up on every single time, and eventually my dad would say, love you back. And I got to then take trips up to Jersey. And during this time, my dad started having a family. He had 3 small children, and I would visit. I would go up there with a car full of AA people. I didn't drive for my first 3 years, and these people would take me up to Jersey, so I could participate in my family's life. And eventually I was able to get my license, get a car, and I'd go up there for entire weekends at a time, And then after 4 years, I made direct amends to my father, and I knew we were right, And 3 years ago, he walked me down the aisle when I got married. And 18 months ago, I had my first daughter, and I got to see another aspect of my father. My whole life, my father's been a monster. And even into sobriety, he was like I saw him as a sick man. And now as a grandfather, it's like unbelievable. It's like an entirely new person. And now getting to have this new experience and to be able to feel this love and appreciation for him, I would have missed it all without you guys, And I know the greatest amends that I could make to my mother is to have this relationship with my father. That's all she wanted. And, I've done a lot of work in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm still very, very sick. I mean, we were talking on the way up here. I've had a rough week. You know, one of those weeks where it's on you. You know, restless, irritable, discontent. I'm praying it down. I went to a conference yesterday. I'm listening to speaker CDs, like trying to keep the demons down. And I'm grateful. You know, I'm grateful that my sponsor used to call, you have the gift of divine dissatisfaction. You know, and I still have this soul sickness that pushes me towards God, more God, more God. And it is ever growing, and that means I am ever searching for more God. I try to live today in 10, 11, and 12, and I fall short. You know, I've done things in sobriety that I'm not proud of. I've lied, I've cheated, I've stole, dead sober. You know, I've had to make amends sober to women I sponsor. I've had to make amends to groups. You know, my conduct just doesn't change because I stopped drinking. I need to change in that 6th and 7th. You know, for a long time in AA, I hid behind this ego, you know, this bravado that I am someone. I wanted to be somebody in AA, so I'd be really busy. I'd be sponsoring a lot of people and having a lot of service, and, you know, but you wouldn't see me how I really acted when nobody was looking. You know, I had no integrity. I'd put on this great AA face, 8:30 to 9:30, and then when I got home, you know, I'd be stalking my boyfriend and sending shady text messages to other men and stealing from my work, and, you know, it damn near killed me because I wanted to look good in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I couldn't be honest with you how I was dying on the inside. You know, and there is no cutting corners around here. You know, you will pick up that tab at one point or another, and I did. And I'm grateful. You know, I'm grateful that I've gotten surrendered here, that God has surrendered me and given me that big dose of humility many times over. You know, my life today is unrecognizable. You know, because of you, I went back to school. I got a career. 5 years ago, I got sworn in to be an assistant state's attorney for the state of Maryland. And that is, you know, unbelievable. I mean, it's an impossibility for a girl like me. Like I said, I mean, 18 months ago, I had my first child. I also have a stepdaughter, and that has been a wild ride. You know, I thought I had this all figured out. I would have never admitted that, but I did. I thought I had my formula. This many meetings, this much service, this much, you know, I'm coasting. And then I threw a kid in there, woo, you know, messed it all up. And I had no idea the expectations that I had on myself, you know, the new defects that I had. And, you know, I am not, you know, we always say it, baby's not going to fix you. It didn't. It made things a lot worse. You know, it made me really look at myself and the level of my selfishness and self-centeredness, you know. And it's been challenging on a whole new level because I can't just stop, drop, and roll every time I want to. You know, that now I have to coordinate with my husband, who's also an Alcoholics Anonymous, that we have to share our meeting schedule, you know, that we have to share this responsibility, and it goes against me on a level that I'm ashamed to admit, you know, the entitlement that I have, that I want to do what I want when I want, you know. And it also made me surrender this idea of, like, how much I still had this, I want to be somebody. You know, because having a kid definitely put the brakes on my career, and that was a hard pill to swallow, you know, because my ego is still trying to sustain itself here. And we were talking a bit about it. I mean, I have tried to fill this God-sized hole, even into sobriety, with jobs, men, you know, status in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've always still have this yearning, like, what is my purpose? And my sponsor is continuously reminding me, my only purpose is to seek and do God's will, you know. And I'm so grateful that this weekend I got to come out here, and it's these moments. And I've listed off a lot of great blessings, but, you know, this afternoon we got to drive up here, and one of the girls I sponsored got to make a graveside amends in Jersey. So we did a pit stop there and then drove over here. And, you know, watching her read that letter and knowing, you know, the journey that she's about to embark on, and to feel the presence of God in that moment. I mean, you can't, you know, the speaker was saying it last night, you know, I'm describing this stuff, but it's like, I can't tell you what a banana tastes like. I can just tell you, you know what I mean? You can't, there's no words to describe this experience. The best that I can hope is that I've done a good enough job that you want to go get a banana yourself, you know, that you want to seek and find this spiritual experience, because it is that powerful, that it is a sufficient substitute for this thing called alcoholism and my love for alcohol. So I'm definitely grateful to be here, and thanks for letting me share.
Epic. Let's thank Joyce one more time for coming. CDs are available from the last 5 weeks of the women speakers. If you want them, they're available free. There's the meeting after the meeting. Just so you know, we have a Facebook page. It's good to stay connected. It gets to see everything that our group does. The workshops we put on, we got a lot of great stuff going on here. We got Sheldon F. is coming out from Vegas for our anniversary in April. We just booked Chris R. from Texas for December 14th of 2019. So there you go. Give you a reason not to drink for a while. We always like to hang that carrot out there. Our food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. So if you ever like to come out here, come a little early and have some fun and speak, hang with us. If you want to help tonight, if you want to do a little service, we got to leave 7 rows deep, 5 across. That's an alcoholic test. If you get that right, you're not an alcoholic. Anyway, we got a nice way of closing. Oh, it's customary for us to form a line and thank our speakers. They do come here at their own time and expense. Please let them know. Thanks again.